I am joined by Alan Dershowitz, a well-known criminal attorney. He's now at Harvard Law School. Alan, thanks for being with us today. Give us your take on this surprising verdict in the Raj Rajaratnam trial, guilty on all 14 counts.
Well, it is surprising in light of the length of the deliberations. Normally, after such lengthy deliberations, you'd find a divided verdict in some way. It's very uphill to win an appeal. Fewer than 10% nationally of all convictions are reversed on appeal. The first really interesting issue will be whether the court grants bail pending appeal. When bail is granted pending appeal, the odds on getting a reversal go up quite a bit. And so that will be the first tell from the court as to how likely it is that this conviction will be challengeable on appeal.
Okay, appellate court is your specialist, of course.
Yep.
If you were tackling this case, what would you focus on first and foremost?
Well, because the verdict is guilt on all counts, you have to look for a pervasive error, something that runs through the trial. It would be a mistake just to try to chip away at one count here and one count there. Of course, the definition of insider trading is so vague and so general, and it's so much a matter of degree. One of your previous guests said it's probably easier today because there's so much information out there. I think it's exactly the opposite. Because there's so much public information and you can get so much information legitimately, it's actually a bit harder to sustain inside trader convictions these days than it used to be. So this will be a very complicated appeal. A good appellate lawyer raises the odds of winning the appeal and having it reversed, but it has to be seen as quite uphill. This is a very unhappy day for the defendant and a very happy day for the prosecution, although you never know what's going to happen on appeal.
That's right. What about the wiretaps? Because as we know, they have never been used before in an insider trading case. Is there a chance that the appellate attorney could go after the ruling to allow the wiretaps and get that overturned? If that were to happen, is that a possibility? And if that were to happen, what kind of case is Rajaratnam looking at in the appeals court?
Well, I think it's a stretch to say that just because wiretaps are not generally used in insider trading cases, that casts doubt on their legality. One has to look at the circumstances under which the wiretap was authorized. The statute itself doesn't limit it to mafia-type or organized crime cases. And wiretapping has been used and affirmed by the courts since the 1920s. So I would be looking for errors other than a general attack on the use of wiretaps in insider trading cases. That does not sound to me like a winning issue. Okay.
What are Rajaratnam's best chance of getting some of those 14 counts overturned and reducing, I guess, the best case scenario of that 20 potential year sentence that he's facing today?
Well, you know, sometimes getting a few of the charges dropped out has no effect on the sentence, because judges very often in these kinds of cases, sentence concurrently. That is, they give him a particular sentence that they think they deserve, say 5 years or something like that, which is more likely than 25 years, and then says 5 years on this count, 5 years on this count, 5 years on this count, all of them to run concurrently, which makes it much harder to win on appeal. Because if the judge does that, then you have to have virtually all the counts thrown out in order to have a real impact on the sentence. That's why you need to look for an issue that runs through the trial, that throws out all the counts rather than just chipping away at one count or another. That's a mistake that some lawyers on appeal do, thinking that they can actually win a Pyrrhic victory, and that's all it would be, if they can knock out some of the counts while keeping some of the other counts valid.
What are your thoughts on, I know this will be up to the judge on July 29th, the sentencing. Typically with a client or a criminal such as Rajaratnam, based on today's guilty verdict, will he go to jail during the appeals process, and how long may that take?
Well, often in the Second Circuit, they do remand them to prison pending appeal. Generally, they keep them out pending sentence, except if there's a flight risk. But then very frequently, they'll send them to jail. That will be a big issue, and I would recommend to the defense lawyers that they focus a lot of attention on bail pending appeal. And if I were the defendant, I would bring in a team of appellate specialists, particularly those who have been successful on getting bail pending appeal, because that's a big, big deal. Because if you don't get bail pending appeal and then you win your appeal a year later, where do you get the year back? You never get it back. so that keeping a defendant out of jail pending appeal is a big deal in and of itself, and it also signifies that the court takes seriously the appellate issues and raises the odds of ultimately winning the case on appeal.
Okay, and Alan, a final question here is, when we look at these cases, we have a new crop of traders facing trial related to this case. Does this verdict today make the job of their defense attorneys that much harder? Much harder, and probably we'll see some of the dominoes fall, because when you get a conviction like this, usually the government raises the stakes, raises what it will offer as a deal, and the defendants are more anxious to plead, seeing that there's been a conviction. Of course, for some optimistic defendants, they'll say, look, this took so long, maybe we can roll the dice and see if we can get an acquittal. There's nothing binding about this opinion on future cases, but it certainly creates an atmosphere where the prosecution seems to have a significant advantage. Okay, Alan, well, thanks so much for your time. We have to leave it there.